καλέσω στο βήμα τον κύριο Michael Lynch, την κυρία Δημητρίου Βασιλοπούλου, την κυρία Βερόνικα Διεθνής, τα γερμανικά δεν ήταν το σημείο, και την κυρία Κρίση Παραδράνο. Θα παρακαλούσα δυνατόν αν μπορούμε να αλλάξουμε λίγο το φωτισμό, γιατί έρχεται τελείωσε πάνω στο τραπέζι, και απλώς να ενημερώσω ότι υπάρχει μια αλλαγή στο πρόγραμμα λόγω του προγραμματισμού του κοινοβουλευτικού έργου. Η κυρία Ελναράπτη ειδοποίησε ότι θα έρθει στην πορεία που είναι προγραμματισμένη για το προηγούμενο τραπέζι. Δίνω πάρα το λόγο στον κύριο Michael Lynch, επιδιορετή ερευνός στην αστυνομική διεύθυνση στην Ιρλανδία και επικεφαλής του Τμήματος Παιδικής Προστασίας και του Τμήματος Κοινωνικού Επίπεδος, όπου θα μας μιλήσει για την αοπλάνηση και τη σεξουαλική εκμετάλλευση παιδιών, κάτι που θεματική στην οποία θα επανέλθει και στην αυριανή ημέρα. Inspector Lynch. Okay. Τεχνολογία. Αν είναι δυνατόν λίγο οι προβολείς που έρχονται στη στιγμή να μην είναι τόσο πάνω μας. Τεχνολογία είναι σαν τους αντρικούς χαρακτήρες στην κλασική λογοτεχνία. Ποτέ δεν στέκεται στο ύψος των υποσχέσεων της.
Excuse me, I challenge myself to stand for this, because I'm involved in training police interviewers, and we always tell them to stay away from the desk, get rid of all the barriers to communication. What I'm going to talk about is grooming and the sexual exploitation of children. So what I'll cover is what grooming is. It's a very difficult thing to understand. It's very difficult to define grooming. It is a bit said earlier on, it's very difficult to define a child's sexual abuse, and grooming is the same. But also talk a little bit about what is the purpose of grooming, and who grooms and who gets groomed, and that's a very important thing to consider. The problem with grooming is the term itself. The media keep talking about grooming all the time, and they mean internet grooming. All of these newspaper articles keep coming out and they keep saying online grooming, internet grooming, and so on. The problem is, when grooming was first used was 1995 by a renowned psychologist called Salter. But in 2001, people started using it to describe the grooming of children in internet chat rooms, and from there on, internet grooming. And it gives us this idea of stranger danger. The fact that children are groomed by strangers and sexually abused by strangers. And it was said earlier on, 75 to 80%. In Ireland, I think we had research that said 87% of children who were sexually abused knew who their abuser was. And Elizabeth said earlier on that child sexual abuse has been going on forever, since time began. And if child sexual abuse has been going on forever, so has grooming, because that's how people get to abuse children. It's very rare you hear that a child is attacked on a street and raped. People who abuse children find it much easier to groom. Less people find out about it. Less groomers, less abusers are detected, are found, because they use grooming instead of just attacking a child on the street. The children who are groomed are much less likely to tell. The problem with grooming, though, is we have to figure out when a person who's being friendly with a child, are they being harmful, are they grooming the child, or are they just being nice to the child? Are they being a role model? And that's a big issue for us in society. When I started doing talks on grooming, I looked up dictionaries to see what grooming meant in the dictionaries. And the first one I found was grooming an animal to keep an animal's hair or fur clean and tidy. And you might wonder, what tidy and clean have to do with child abuse? It's called grooming as well. But if you think about it, if you're grooming, it's about making yourself look good. You get people to trust you, and to get people to trust you, you have to look good to them. And underneath that is to prepare for a future role or function. And really that's what groomers are doing, what people who abuse children do. The Collins English Dictionary then came up with winning the confidence of the victim in order to commit a sexual assault on him or her. And that's very close. But as it was also said earlier on, an awful lot of abuse, particularly abuse by strangers who groom children on the internet, does not involve a sexual assault. It doesn't involve contact abuse. It's usually trying to get the child to perform a sexual activity, video record it, or photograph and send it back to them, because that's much safer for the abuser. The National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children in the UK then came up with grooming is when someone builds an emotional connection with a child to gain their trust for the purpose of sexual abuse or sexual exploitation. And that's pretty close to what grooming is. But I'll show later on, it's not just about grooming the child. A lot of other people get groomed as well by people who sexually abuse children. A lady who now works for Facebook did a course did a PhD in England about grooming, particularly cyber grooming, and came up with this definition: a course of conduct enacted by a suspected paedophile, which would give a reasonable person cause for concern that any meeting with a child arising from the conduct would be for unlawful purposes. Even that, there's a problem with this definition. It's not always a paedophile who grooms children. It's not always a paedophile who sexually abuses children. In Ireland, we had an investigation where a 30-year-old man met up with a 15-year-old boy, engaged in sexual activity with the boy, but he had no interest in the child. They were on a website, on chat, and he had an interest in a 19-year-old who had an interest in the 15-year-old, and he felt that he got the 15-year-old involved, he could have sexual contact with the 19-year-old man. That's nearly more evil than a paedophile who has a sexual interest in children. It's not always about meeting the child, as I said. An awful lot of abuse is not contact abuse. And the unlawful purpose as well is for the sexual exploitation of the child. So we have difficulties with the definition. When we interview suspects, we call it building rapport, but what we're really doing is grooming them to talk to us and to admit their crimes. So when we arrest people for sexual abuse, sexual abuse, we're trying to groom them to get them to talk to us. So it's like building rapport. But the problem with finding out what grooming is and identifying it early is what are we going to do about the people who are being role models for children, because their behaviour is very similar to the early behaviour of people who groom children. Football coaches, youth leaders, they're all being role models for children and being friendly with children. Sometimes they're replacing the parents because the children might come from a dysfunctional family and they're helping to look after the children. So we need to be able to figure out how that works. But when it comes to who grooms, when we read it in the media, it's always about the stranger on the internet. I don't know if this phrase means anything here, but in Ireland and England, we refer to the sexual predator as the man in the raincoat with a bag of sweets, offering the sweets to the children. That's his form of grooming. And that's not really that common at all, because 87% of children in Ireland are sexually assaulted by people that they know, or sexually abused by people that they know. So the stranger in the street or the park, it's just the same as a stranger on the internet. It does happen, but we need to be worried about sexual abuse in the home, sexual abuse by teachers, youth leaders, and so on. That's where most of it happens. So who can groom? Well, parents or other family members, sports coaches, youth leaders, teachers, priests. There's been a major scandal in Ireland over the last number of years in relation to priests. Unfortunately, police officers can also groom and sexually assault children. And it's also important to understand that it's not always men. It's always men that get caught. But there are women. We've arrested a few women in Ireland for sexually abusing children. And it's not just women being involved in the man sexually abusing a child, they engage in sexual abuse themselves. And what's becoming increasingly more common with the development of the internet, and particularly smartphones, is that other children abuse children, sexually abuse children. And there's a huge issue with self-taken imagery in Ireland. I'm sure it's the same here, it's the same in most countries. Children will take photographs or video files of themselves engaged in sexual activity with their boyfriends and girlfriends. They think they trust each other, they share it. The boyfriend shares it with all the friends in the class that he trusts. They share it with all of their friends that they trust. And soon, a whole town like Veroia has the images. Everyone's sharing it. And the problem for the children, and we try not to criminalise children in Ireland when this happens, they're producing child pornography and they're distributing child pornography. And if you get convicted of that in Ireland, you go on a sex offenders register and you have to tell the police where you live. The police visit you every so often and have a meeting with you to make sure you're staying away from children. But in cases like this, we adopt a welfare approach, and we try to educate children now in Ireland in relation to the dangers of this. Because even if it is only children sharing, adults who are offenders infiltrate those groups of children and they get hold of the pictures and they use them to blackmail the children. So the internet does provide new opportunities for offenders, most of whom or some of whom are strangers to groom children. But what's really important to remember is the vast majority of children are groomed by someone they already know. And that includes on the internet and with the use of mobile phones. In the last 2 weeks, a very well-known sports journalist in Ireland was convicted of sexually abusing a child. And he groomed her for 2 years by mobile phone and the use of messenger services on the internet. But he knew her. So what happens in organisations with youth leaders, sports coaches, They will use the internet, they will use telephones to groom children. And it's not only strangers who use the internet to groom children, it's still people that you know, other family members such as uncles and so on. So the clear purpose of grooming as opposed to child sexual abuse, the way we're talking about grooming, that's the purpose for it. But there's other purposes. Collecting child abuse material or child pornography. And as I already mentioned, self-taking child pornography or child abuse material. So who gets groomed? Well, this is a really important part of grooming. This is what professionals need to understand about grooming. The family of the child is groomed. If it's a relative, I had an investigation years ago where a child was sexually abused by her uncle and he shared the images with other sex offenders on the internet. And when we found the child first, trying to identify victims of child abuse on the internet. We found her first, and when we spoke to the mother, this uncle was the golden boy in the family. He was the one that the family sent to university, he became an engineer. He was the one who always turned up at all of the family events, and he was brilliant with the kids. He always had the camera with him. The family of the offender is also groomed because they don't know this is happening. Even if it's the same family of the child, a lot of the time the mother doesn't know that it's happening. Maybe she got some clues, but it just didn't appear to her at all that this was happening. Friends of the offender get groomed. And to give you an example, this famous sports journalist who was convicted a couple of weeks ago, or sentenced a couple of weeks ago, he used two of his friends to give him character references for court to try and mitigate against the sentence. So he groomed his friends to do that. Once they had that done, the media tore the two of them apart for supporting a sex offender. People who sexually abuse children will groom colleagues in work, whether it's employment or voluntary organisations that they're a part of so that they can get access to children. And really, the whole village, town, the whole community can be groomed by people who sexually abuse children. Because they can be the pillars of society, they're the people who are often respected in the town. So everyone can be groomed. And the important thing to understand is sex offenders are often called monsters, but it's not until they're caught. They're not really monsters, they're people with a sexual interest in children. But until they are caught, they're usually very nice people. They're the pillars of society. I hope that term means something in Greek as well. And I suppose a really important thing to remember about people who sexually abuse children is that being nice is part of the modus operandi. So going back to who's groomed, what about all the professionals who work with people who sexually abuse children? When the police interview them, they are nice people. So they might get away with something in an interview. The police might start to wonder, did this really happen? This is a nice guy, he couldn't have done this. Social workers are the same, lawyers. The defence lawyers will fight viciously for their clients because they believe that they're innocent because they're so nice. Doctors and psychologists who might work with the offender will think that they're nice people. And I put a question mark after judges because in Ireland the judge is infallible. He can't say they ever do anything wrong. But this sports journalist who was convicted, who was sentenced a couple of weeks ago, when he was in court for sentencing, the judge has to take a lot into account, including what we call mitigating factors that can reduce the sentence. And his lawyer told the judge that this man has suffered from depression for a long time. And that could be a reason to reduce the sentence. But just saying it could be an effort to groom the judge. And the next thing the lawyer said was that since this man has been arrested, he has stopped taking his depression medication because he wants to feel the pain of what he has done. Now that's an attempt to groom. Thank you very much.
Είναι, νομίζω, πολύ αναγνωρίσιμα διάφορα πράγματα από αυτά που παρουσιάστηκαν και στην ελληνική πραγματικότητα, όπου πάρα πολλές φορές, εγώ τουλάχιστον μπορώ να θυμηθώ θέση στο δικαστήριο, όπου ειδικά οι συνήγοροι των φερόμενων παιδοφίλων άρχισαν να αναπτύσσουν μια προβληματική ότι έχει διδακτορικό, έχει μάστερ, λες και λέει κάπου ότι όποιος έχει μάστερ δεν διάφορα τέτοια, και όχι μόνο. Πράγμα που μας φέρνει την δυνατότητα του συστήματος να αναγνωρίζει τι έχει νόημα να λέγεται και τι δεν έχει νόημα να λέγεται σε μια εξέταση υπόθεσης σεξουαλικής παραβίασης.